think most, if not all of you, listened to music when you were young, right? If your answer to that question is yes, then I'd like to pose a second question to you. Did this music oppose or clash with the music that your parents listened to? The chances that it did are pretty high. As music evolves, each generation seems to gravitate towards music that they feel expresses the gulf that separates them from their parents' generation. I know my mum certainly doesn't get my music and has often said, "But it's just noise." We all have preconceived notions about what audiences certain artists attract, based on the image, personality, and genre that said artist maintains. We immediately assume the average age of their audience and what type of person their listeners are. The truth is, the music we choose to listen to reflects our self-image and how we are seen by society. Certain lifestyles get assigned to certain genres. I'm sure that you wouldn't be surprised if someone listening to Bob Marley was also simultaneously consuming certain psychoactive substances. As a consumer, we stereotype. We use stereotypes to navigate the world that we live in because that's how the human brain works. A part of your brain called the amygdala determines your prejudices, your judgment, and your bias of someone based on the features of their character, including what music they listen to. Theodor Adorno was a German philosopher who was famous for declaring that Walt Disney was the most dangerous man in America. He also theorized the idea that when consuming media, an individual tries on identities as they would a change of clothes. If someone wanted to be rebellious in the 70s, for instance, buying a Sex Pistols album, perhaps some Vivienne Westwood tartan trousers, and a can of Elnet hairspray might just do the trick. But are they really rebelling? Or have they just bought the concept of rebellion, an idea and an aesthetic sold to them by a major record label? The music industry has always been quick to capitalize off of the youth's burning desire to feel rebellious. Ever since Elvis first curled his lips and gyrated his hips, causing teenage girls to have a sexual frenzy, the music industry has been figuring out ways to use that same rock star status as an icon to sell more records. They worked out very quickly that the music itself doesn't actually have to rebel against anything. But it is enough for the people behind the music to look and act the part in order to attract a profitable youthful audience and to create the illusion of rebellion. A more recent example of this idea is the creation of the industry plant, most namely in rap music, where a major record label dumps a ton of money into a young artist with almost no following, then forces a contract which details how the artist should look or sound, typically based off of the dominant trends of music at that time. All this is done to ensure that a profit is made. Billie Eilish is seen by many as an example of an industry plant. But I ask you all, is music created for the sole purpose of profit real music? Or would masses of possible fans miss out on artists like Billie if they weren't backed by major record labels? Everyone in the 60s knew that pop sensation the Monkees were a fabricated band. Even the Monkees themselves, referencing in their bouncy tune, Ditty Diego, how they love to please a manufactured image. But does this discount them from being talented musicians? That's up to you. There have always been artists who have resisted and rejected the music industry's attempts to commoditize them, however. And lead singer of the revolutionary grunge band Nirvana, Kurt Cobain, is a prime example of an artist who struggled against this his entire career, and arguably paid the price. Nirvana experienced a stratospheric, perhaps catastrophic rise to fame after moving from small-time independent record label Sub Pop to major record label Geffen Records and releasing Nevermind in 1991. Coming, as they did, after the decade of hair metal, the muscular, masculine anthems of Motley Crue and Van Halen, which had delirious, drug-fueled fans headbanging their way throughout the 80s, Nirvana's somber, yet unrestrained songs came as a relief to many. Although their lyrical themes were a welcome departure, with Smells Like Teen Spirit swiftly becoming both the most popular and most overplayed song of the 90s, Nirvana quickly lost their freshness in the public eye. Nirvana's follow-up album, In Utero, was an attempt for the band to return to their punk rock roots, with songs like Rape Me being deliberately controversial, confrontational, and difficult to listen to. It was almost as if the band were trying to shed and disrupt their own commercial success. But while grunge may have been a breath of fresh air for the music industry, it quickly became the stale and suffocating presence in popular rock and roll, with bands like Stone Temple Pilots, Soundgarden, and Pearl Jam creating a more commercial, more digestible, and more palatable version of the grunge genre. This endless commodification within the music industry reminds me of a quote by social theorist Jacques Attali. The artist was born at the same time his work went on sale. Kurt Cobain, the effective inventor of grunge as we know it, came to despise what he had created, and how his art had become a parody of itself through over-commodification. He was often photographed wearing a Grunge is Dead t-shirt. Cobain is tragically long dead, but he lives on, both in Primark and H&M collections, plastered on the front of t-shirts and hoodies alike, because nothing says transcendent state quite like fast fashion. But what happens if we deprive a society of popular and mass-produced culture? Seems like a good thing, right? Well, Walter Ulbricht, leader of the communist bloc during the Cold War, wasn't a fan of the Beatles. Do we really have to copy all the rubbish that comes from the West with all the monotony of their yeah, yeah, yeah? He sneered during a turgid speech to his party faithful. You see, Ulbricht banned most contemporary Western media, leaving compatriots with nothing to be entertained by except radio and television broadcasts about the agricultural progress of their communist state. He even tried to mandate how much Western music could be played at private parties. And all this contributed to a build-up of mass resentment and frustration within its population, ironically motivating most of the population to break the law and rebel to consume Western media. Ulbricht himself couldn't even resist the allure, arranging for the Bond films to be smuggled across the Berlin Wall for himself to privately enjoy. And on that note, I'll leave you with this. Does true rebellion even exist in the modern world? Or has the very antithesis to capitalism been capitalized? The relationship between capitalism and youth rebellion can be seen as a twisted love affair, with both ideologies dependent on each other, a relationship that's symbiotic in nature. Will capitalism dominate this relationship, or are the pair doomed to exist in conflict forever. Thank you.